Hey there! Thanks for all the love on the cover reveal the other day. It was awesome seeing people's reactions and reconnecting with people I hadn't chatted with in a while. I actually have a physical version of the book, proof copy, which was good because I went through and read a couple things and made some changes. So the book is still wrapping up in terms of getting it out into the real world. But since I had some people ask questions, I figured I would address them really quick and then read a little piece from the book. So the biggest question is, what is with the goofy band name SKAborough Fair? And the short answer is the band in the book is a huge fan of Simon and Garfunkel. And it's the one thing that they all kind of agree on. And they specifically like the song Richard Cory, which is a sad song. If you never heard it, you should listen to it. I created a Spotify playlist that I'll share at some point after the book comes out. That'll give you a sense of, I think, every song that I mention in the book, maybe. And certainly all the bands are represented in there. But in the 90s, and actually, I guess a little before with like the Scotalites, bands would make it painfully obvious that they are ska bands by inserting the word ska, S-K-A, in the title of the band, or in the album name or in the song names or something like that. So that's what I did. You know, when the band is trying to come up with their name, this is what occurs to them, and it seems natural and makes sense. Now, what they learn then is that you're kind of stuck with that name, unfortunately. So if you choose a band name and you're successful, that's your band for life. You have a really hard time changing that name. And I find those stories really interesting. Like when I read about other bands and talk to musicians, you know, how they chose their name. Sometimes it was spontaneous, sometimes it was a whim. Um, and then, you know, the minute that they've made a name for themselves, they're stuck with that. So that's what happens with my band here. The other question I got asked is, what is ska, and do I need to care about music? Um, Nicer than the way I've phrased it and simplified the question, but the simple answer is you don't need to know anything about ska, really. I'm sure that you've heard music that is in the ska genre, and you know if you're not familiar, it just sounds like pop music or music on the radio or whatever. Um, if you know about it, it'll resonate and make a little more sense throughout the book. There are some references you'll get, that kind of thing. Um, but the story, really, the book is really about a group of friends and their relationships and struggling with coming to terms with what it means to be an adult and to make a living and all those things. And then to complicate matters, I threw them in a band that become a one-hit wonder. And they tour the world and all that stuff. So the book itself is created like a 25-year retrospective. So at the beginning of it is a section called Liner Notes, and their producer Conrad writes that. They're three short chapters. There used to be a fourth, but it got cut. And in there, he essentially sets up the book. So there's a section about the origins of the band, a section about introduction to ska that I'll read here, and then introduction of the characters. You know, who are these people? What are their names? That kind of thing. And so if you imagined like getting your anniversary edition of vinyl, the thick book that would come with it would be Conrad, the music producer's notes, kind of setting that up. And then after Conrad's done, um, Louis takes over, and he's one of the band members, and he tells the rest of the book. So I just figured I would read a quick section, the introduction to ska, since that was one of the questions I got a bunch. So it says, our story takes place in the 1990s when ska was a relatively new genre of music emerging. You don't need to know anything about ska to enjoy the story that follows. You'll miss a few references here and there, but ultimately, the experience is enjoyable with or without knowing the genre. That said, if you want to skip the rest of this short section and go right to the next chapter, I promise not to be offended. True. If you're still reading this section, then you might wonder why mention ska at all if it's not important to the story. The simple answer is because it was a notable genre of music during the time our story takes place. Some ska bands had already had already established themselves by this time, such as the Mighty Mighty Bosstones, but were finally just getting their moment to shine, while others, like SKAborough Fair, were just being born. I'm sure that once you hear more of the band names, it'll start to sound familiar. What's ska? Here's your primer. Ska sounds like a marriage of punk rock, horns, and reggae. Purists might be offended by that definition, but I think it's solid. The band that most distinctly embodies what I think of as ska is Fishbone. Their mix of high energy, musical prowess, and sense of humor are everything I like in a live show. Fishbone's albums were great, but couldn't ever hope to capture the magic of their performing on stage. Their self titled EP with Ugly and Party at Ground Zero, among 5 other songs, set the stage for what was to come. It wasn't really until Fishbone hit MTV with Swim in 1993, and then in 1996 with their album Chim Chim's Badass Revenge, that they were considered mainstream. They never got nearly as much attention as they deserved, but man, could they put on a show. Thanks to YouTube, which functions as a time machine, you can easily travel back to 1987 to see Fishbone perform an early version of Alcoholic at the Ink Stink Factory in Tokyo. This song wouldn't grace the record until 1996 aforementioned Chim Chim's Badass Revenge, but if you watch the video, you can see it's fully formed in a crowd-pleasing number. The little snippet they play of AC/DC's Back in Black is included just as a bonus. But technically, Fishbone and Mighty Mighty Boss Tones were part of the third wave. Wait, you say? Third wave? What came first? The first wave was more of a bridge between 60s music from Jamaica and America and English pop music. The poster child of this wave is the SKAdelites, best known for their song Guns and Navarone, which was written for the movie of the same name. But you might also consider Toots and the Maytals as part of this group. You would definitely include Prince Buster, Jimmy Cliff, and Desmond Decker. It's also important to note that this was a sound that was happening on both sides of the Atlantic. The ska bands in the UK had a slightly different sound from those in the US, and then they cross-pollinated. The second wave started to infuse more of the punk energy. It emerged with the 70s British dance music. This is reflected in bands like The Specials, Madness, The Beat, who had to change their name to The English Beat when they toured the US, Bad Manners, The Piranhas, and America's, quote, first ska band, The Untouchables, out of Los Angeles. The third wave was more punk-infused, up-tempo, high energy, and any other similar adjectives you want to use to describe them. Bands from this wave include Fishbone, Operation Ivy, Less Than Jake, Mephistopheles, No Doubt, Goldfinger, Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, Mustard Plug, The Toasters, Bim Scala Bim, Voodoo Glow Skulls, Dance Hall Crashers, Skinkin' Pickles, The Pie Tasters, and as many others as you want to pack on your playlist. So there's your primer. That's a quick start of the book. And I'll be doing other readings, and stay tuned because I'll also be announcing some in-person visits, partnered with some other fellow authors that I know as well. So anyway, thanks for listening and watching. Have a good one.